When you think of evil in Star Wars, there is one name that always comes up, and that is Palpatine. Palpatine was not just a Sith Lord hiding in the shadows, he was the man who outsmarted the entire galaxy, the Jedi, the Senate, and even their own apprentices. What makes him terrifying isn't just his power in the Force, it was how patient he was. Every move he made was part of a plan that took decades to unfold, from a senator on Naboo to the Emperor of the Galaxy and beyond death itself. This will be the complete story of Darth Sidious, also known as Palpatine. With that being said, let's dive right into it. Sheev Palpatine was born into the noble house Palpatine on Naboo, the eldest son of Kosinga Palpatine. From an early age, young Palpatine sensed that he was very different. He was harboring ruthless ambition and fascination with forbidden knowledge, often at odds with his father, an influential aristocrat content with provincial politics. Their relationship was toxic. Palpatine despised Kosinga's lack of vision, and in turn, Kosinga grew to fear his own son's murderous nature, even having the boy's lineage tested out of paranoia. In 67 BBY, fate intervened Palpatine's life. The Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Plagueis, known publicly as a wealthy financier, Hego Damask, took notice of the politically astute young man. Plagueis recognized Palpatine's potential, both his cunning and his latent strength in the Force. Under the guise of mentorship, Plagueis befriended Palpatine and subtly stoked the boy's resentment towards his family. During Naboo's election season, Palpatine leaked information that aided a pro-Republican candidate, defying his isolationist father and earning Plagueis' interest. The Mune Sith Lord maneuvered to recruit Palpatine as an informant, and their secret association deepened, much to Kosinga's surprise. Kosinga Palpatine soon tried to remove his son from Damask's influence by force. He arrived with the entire family aboard a private ship, intent on exiling Palpatine to a distant school. Aboard the ship, years of mutual hatred erupted. Kosinga admitted he wanted to kill Palpatine since his birth. That confession shattered the last restraint on the youth's dark fury. In a sudden explosion of the Force, power, and rage, Palpatine slaughtered his father, his mother, and everyone else on board of that ship. It was a complete massacre. Shocked and liberated by what he had done, Palpatine contacted Hego Damask. Plagueis smoothly arranged a cover-up of the incident, erasing records and ensuring none would ever tie Palpatine to the accident that killed House Palpatine. In that moment, the young man became, in Plagueis' words, emancipated from his old life. Recognizing Palpatine's limitless ambition and lack of remorse, Darth Plagueis offered a complete transformation for the boy. Palpatine pledged himself to the Sith Lord, kneeling before Plagueis as his new apprentice. Following ancient tradition, Plagueis bestowed upon his apprentice a Sith name that reflected his nature. Seeing the cunning and treachery in him, Plagueis named him Darth Sidious, marking the birth of a future Dark Lord. Under Darth Plagueis' guidance, Sidious underwent brutal training. Plagueis pushed him to recount the slaughter of his family over and over again, numbing any remaining feeling or weakness. The Sith Master subjected Sidious to extreme trials, exposing him to deadly cold, sleep deprivation, and mind-clouding illusions, all intending to forge the cruel, patient Sith he needed. During the period, Sidious' public persona, Palpatine, remained friendly, unremarkable, young, and noble, even as he delved deeper into the dark power in secret. Plagueis, for his part, had radical ambitions. He despised the Rule of Two mandate that the apprentice would eventually kill the master. Plagueis envisioned himself achieving immortality and ruling from the shadows indefinitely, with Sidious as the visible political figurehead, the power behind the throne, guiding a grand plan to destroy the Jedi and dominate the galaxy forever. Unbeknownst to Plagueis, Sidious had no intention of being anyone's pawn forever, but for years he played the obedient student, learning all he could from Plagueis while honing parallel schemes of his own. Even as he trained in the dark side, Palpatine began laying the groundwork for a political career on Naboo. Backed by Plagueis' vast resources and advice, he cultivated allies and quietly removed obstacles. For instance, with Plagueis' encouragement, he befriended an influential Naboo official like Vidar Kim, the senator of Naboo, and Supreme Chancellor Venus Valorum's advisor Ars Varuna. But Sidious' friendship was a deadly one. In 52 BBY, Palpatine arranged the assassination of Senator Vidar Kim, clearing way for himself to claim Naboo's Senate seat. The grieving protege swiftly stepped into Kim's role, presenting himself as a humble replacement from Naboo. With Plagueis pulling the strings in the background, Palpatine was duly elected as Naboo's senator in the Galactic Republic. Now a senator, Palpatine Palpatine mastered the art of appearing modest and unambitious. In the Galactic Senate on Coruscant, he played the role of a soft-spoken provincial legislator, a man with no interest in power who was often overlooked by the Republic's power brokers. This was a calculated mask. Palpatine deliberately kept a low profile, avoiding controversial committees and acting agreeable, all to make himself appear harmless to his rivals. Behind closed doors, however, he was advancing the Sith Grand Plan. He wrote influential treaties on power and governance, distributed under the radar, and spent long hours in seclusion, time he actually devoted to Sith studies and training his own secret apprentice, Darth Maul. Years earlier, while still apprenticed to Plagueis, Palpatine took a trip to Dathomir. Palpatine encountered a Night Sister and obtained a Zabarak infant from her, a child strong in the dark side, the child he raised and molded in secret. The boy would become known as Darth Maul, trained from infancy, an unquestioning Sith assassin, loyal to Sidious alone. Plagueis was fully aware of Maul and allowed the arrangement because he viewed Maul as a Sith assassin, not a true heir under the rule of two. In Plagueis' mind, the line of succession remained master to Sidious. Maul was a field knife for covert operations, useful for testing the Jedi and advancing the Grand Plan, but not the apprentice destined to replace Sidious. By the time Palpatine became a senator, Maul was already honed into a deadly instrument both Sith Lords were prepared to unleash. Throughout the decade, Senator Palpatine maneuvered with both the Senate and Naboo's royal politics. With Plagueis' help, he influenced the succession of Naboo's throne. Plagueis discreetly eliminated Naboo's king Varuna, enabling the election of the young idealistic queen Padme Amidala. The stage was being set for a grand Sith scheme. Plagueis and Sidious also manipulated events to secretly commission the clone army on Kamino, a long-term investment for their future plans. All the while, Sidious and Plagueis plotted the downfall of the Republic from both fronts. Plagueis worked on scientific secrets of life and death, even experimenting with creating life through the Force, experimenting on Sith such as Darth Venomous, killing him and bringing him back to life multiple times. Whereas Sidious cultivated corruption and discord in the political arena. Their partnership would not last much longer. In 32 BBY, the Sith launched the opening move of their endgame, the Naboo Crisis. Darth Sidious orchestrated an invasion on his homeworld by the Trade Federation, a corrupt corporate alliance disguised in the dark hood of speaking via hologram. Sidious directed the Trade Federation Viceroy Newt Gunray to blockade Naboo to create a political crisis. Queen Amidala of Naboo, not realizing her trusted Senator Palpatine was behind the attack, fled to Coruscant to plead her case. There, Palpatine expertly played the role of the sympathetic advisor while sowing doubt in the effectiveness of the current Chancellor, Venus Valorum. He manipulated Queen Amidala's frustration with the Senate's bureaucracy, convincing her to call for a vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valorum, a bold political move that shocked the Senate. The vote succeeded, unseating Valorum and throwing the office up for grabs. Palpatine's gentle demeanor and Naboo's plight earned him broad sympathy. He positioned himself as a reformist candidate for the chancellorship. As planned, the Senate elected Palpatine as Supreme Chancellor of the Republic, believing him to be an honest man who would resolve the Naboo conflict. Meanwhile, on Naboo, Sidious's apprentice Darth Maul confronted the Jedi Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, who were protecting the Queen. Maul killed Qui-Gon Jinn, but fell also in battle against Obi-Wan Kenobi, apparently losing his life in the palace's reactor shaft. The Trade Federation was defeated, and Naboo was liberated, but the Sith's goal were nonetheless achieved. Palpatine returned to Naboo, hailed as a hero and confident of the new Queen. No one suspected that himself had engineered the entire war on Naboo as a means to ascend to power. Having achieved the office of Chancellorship, Palpatine enacted the final step of his apprenticeship. On the eve of his inauguration, he invited Darth Plagueis to his private celebration. Plagueis had long postponed taking action against his treacherous apprentice, preferring to believe that they would rule together, but Sidious had other ideas. When Plagueis let his guard down after drinking and bragging about their future, Sidious struck him. Using the Force, he blasted his master with Sith lightning and then drained the life from him, killing Darth Plagueis at last. And in that moment, Palpatine fulfilled the Sith rule of two, the apprentice killing the master and assuming the mantle of Dark Lord of the Sith as Darth Sidious. He was the new Sith master, free to pursue his own grand plan. Palpatine's revenge against the Jedi and the Republic was now in full motion. Over the next decade, he consolidated power as Supreme Chancellor, all while keeping his Sith identity carefully hidden. Publicly, Chancellor Palpatine presented himself as the compassionate, grandfatherly statesman dedicated to preserving peace. In reality, Darth Sidious was methodically executing the Sith Grand Plan to destroy the Jedi Order and restore Sith domination. 10 years after Naboo's invasion, Palpatine manufactured a far greater conflict, the Clone Wars, as the ultimate pretext to seize absolute power. Using the Sith acolyte Count Dooku, a former Jedi turned to the dark side, Sidious covertly fueled a separatist movement of star systems disillusioned with the Republic. Dooku under Sidious's guidance, adopted the name Darth Tyrannus and became political leader of the Separatists, the Confederacy of Independent Systems, even as Palpatine remained head of the Republic. In this way, Sidious controlled both sides of the war, an entire galaxy in conflict orchestrated by one man. The plan unfolded meticulously. First, a clone army had already been commissioned years earlier in secret. At Sidious's command, Dooku had arranged for a compliant Jedi, Sifo Dyas, to order a grand army from the cloners of Kamino. When the Separatist crisis reached a boiling point, with thousands of systems seceding under Dooku's leadership, Palpatine, acting reluctant but nonetheless accepted emergency powers granted by the Senate. With a show of reluctance, he activated the ready-made Grand Army of the Republic, the Clone Troopers, to fight the Separatist droid forces. The galaxy spiraled into war, exactly as Sidious foresaw. As worlds burned and tensions skyrocketed, the Senate granted Palpatine ever-increasing authority to deal with the emergency, including extensions of his term limit. The Clone Wars were a means to an end, not victory over the Separatists per se, but rather the concentration of all political and military power into Palpatine's hands under the guise of security. Throughout the war, Palpatine played the dual role to perfection. As Chancellor, he appeared as a steady, reluctant leader who survived assassination attempts and always pleaded for unity. In truth, many of those attempts were secretly engineered by Sidious to frame the Separatists or even to test Anakin Skywalker's loyalty. As Darth Sidious, he remained in the shadows, directing the course of battles, ensuring neither side won too quickly. He also took on another pupil. While Dooku served as his useful figurehead, Sidious's long-term prize was Anakin Skywalker. Palpatine had befriended Anakin Skywalker from the boy's youth, telling him, in The Phantom Menace, "We will watch your career with great interest." During the Clone Wars, Palpatine became a mentor to Anakin Skywalker, always praising his abilities and subtly encouraging his frustrations with the Jedi Council. Knowing Anakin was burdened by the fear of loss, particularly nightmares of his wife Padme dying in childbirth, Palpatine exploited this vulnerability. He carefully planted the idea that dark side knowledge held the power to cheat death, as we saw in the opera scene of Revenge of the Sith. He spun the tale of Darth Plagueis the Wise, a Sith who would save others from dying, hinting at such powers that could be within Anakin's reach if he embraced the dark side of the Force. By 19 BBY, the Clone Wars nearly reached their climax, and Palpatine judged that the time was right to execute Order 66, the grand betrayal of the Jedi. First, he engineered a scenario to remove Count Dooku and further hook Anakin. During the Battle of Coruscant, Palpatine arranged to be kidnapped by Separatist General Grievous, only to be rescued by Anakin and Obi-Wan Kenobi. In the fight, Anakin defeated Count Dooku, and at Palpatine's urging of "do it," he executed and disarmed Count Dooku, an action that weighed on Anakin but also bound him closer to Palpatine's influence. With Dooku now gone, Sidious needed a new Sith apprentice, and he intended that it needed to be Anakin Skywalker. Shortly after, Palpatine finally dropped his friendly mask. He revealed to Anakin that he was the Sith Lord Darth Sidious, claiming that only through him could Anakin learn the power to save Padme from death. Torn and desperate, Anakin reported Palpatine's treachery to the Jedi, prompting Mace Windu and 3 other Jedi Masters to confront the Chancellor. This resulted in the brief but intense duel in Palpatine's private office on Coruscant. Sidious swiftly killed the accompanying Jedi and dueled Windu, showing defeat at the last moment to manipulate Anakin's sympathy. Just as Windu prepared to execute the seemingly weakened Sith Lord, Anakin intervened, betraying the Jedi. Palpatine then unleashed a torrent of Force lightning, blasting Windu out a shattered window to his death. In that moment, Anakin succumbed to the dark side and pledged himself to Darth Sidious, and was anointed Darth Vader, the newest Sith Lord. With Vader as his new enforcer, Palpatine moved swiftly to wipe out the Jedi Order. He transmitted Order 66 to the clone commanders across the galaxy, a hidden command programmed in the clones to brand the Jedi as traitors. In a tragic instant, clone troopers turned on their Jedi generals. Masters and Padawans were gunned down mid-mission on battlefields everywhere across the galaxy. The Great Purge spared only a few Jedi who managed to escape. That same night, Sidious dispatched his new apprentice Darth Vader to the Jedi Temple. Together with clone forces, Vader slaughtered the Jedi younglings and any remaining knights in the Jedi Temple, eliminating the heart of the Jedi Order. Within hours, the Jedi were virtually extinct. The following day, Palpatine addressed the emergency session of the Galactic Senate. Now full of hand-picked loyalists, he announced that the Jedi's rebellion had been crushed, and he framed the attempt Jedi coup as the true cause of the war. To thunderous applause, Palpatine declared the Republic would be reorganized into the First Galactic Empire. He promised that the new empire would ensure ensure peace and security, ending the corruption and the chaos of the Republic. In that moment, Palpatine abandoned any pretense of democracy. He took for himself the title of Emperor, an absolute dictator. The Senate, intimidated and blinded by propaganda, welcomed the change, thus ending the Republic's rule, and Palpatine stood there as the undisputed ruler of the galaxy. As a morbid side effect of the duel with Windu, Palpatine's face had changed. The torrents of force lightning he wielded, deflected back by Windu's lightsaber, left his face horribly disfigured, pale and wrinkled with yellow predatory eyes. No longer did he need to hide behind a kindly facade. He appeared before the Senate hooded and gnarled, claiming that the Jedi attack had left him scarred and deformed. The Senate responded with sympathetic outrage toward the traitorous Jedi and adoration for their savior, the new Empire, and so the Sith ruled openly at last. With the Jedi exterminated and the Clone Wars ended, Emperor Palpatine was free to reshape the galaxy to his dark designs. Over the nearly 2 decades that followed, he concentrated unrivaled authority in himself. The Imperial Senate lingered for a time as a token institution, but its powers were hollowed out as Palpatine ruled by decree, through regional governors, moffs, and his own agents. He relied heavily on fear to maintain control, fear of his military might and the fear of the Emperor's supernatural powers. Whispers spread that Palpatine was more than a man. Some suspected correctly that he was a dark sorcerer of the Sith. Earlier in his reign, Palpatine began massive military buildups. The Galactic Empire fielded legions of stormtroopers, fleets of star destroyers, and countless fighters. The clone army was gradually phased out in favor of natural-born stormtroopers indoctrinated with absolute loyalty. Entire systems were subjugated. Alien species and former separatist worlds were harshly oppressed under the Imperial rule, a human-centric New Order ideology that Palpatine promoted. Any planet that resisted was occupied by force. To cement his rule, Palpatine approved the construction of superweapons. The greatest of these was the Death Star, a moon-sized battle station capable of destroying an entire planet with one blast. The Death Star project had been set in motion during the Clone Wars. Now as Emperor, Palpatine poured vast resources into completing the Doomsday weapon. He intended it to serve as the ultimate symbol of fear, a means to cow star systems into submission with the mere threat of annihilation. Though enormously costly and complex, the Death Star epitomized Palpatine's strategy of ruling through terror and technological dominance. The Empire also expanded its force-wielding enforcers. Palpatine established the Imperial Inquisitors, dark-side agents, often former Jedi turned to serve the Empire, tasked with hunting any surviving Jedi and squashing Force-sensitive threats. In legend stories, Palpatine employed Imperior's hands like Mara Jade, elite undercover agents bonded to his will, to carry out sensitive missions. He also dabbled in Sith alchemy and collected arcane artifacts, stockpiling dark-side knowledge. Everything served the goal of an eternal Sith domination. Despite his outward focus on secular power, Emperor Palpatine never relinquished his obsession with the dark side of the Force. He delved deeper into forbidden experiments, seeking ways to extend his life and even conquer death. In secret, he studied the lore of ancient Sith like Darth Plagueis, teachings on immortality, determined not to suffer the same fate like his former master. This pursuit would have consequences both in canon and legends, as we'll see. During this time, Palpatine continued to keep Darth Vader as his right-hand enforcer. The once promising Anakin Skywalker had been tragically transformed, physically and mentally, into a cyborg in black armor after his duel with Obi-Wan Kenobi on Mustafar. As Vader, he was fearsome and powerful, but also kept on a leash by Emperor Palpatine. The Emperor took satisfaction in having turned the Chosen One into an instrument of Sith tyranny. He encouraged Vader's anger and pain, knowing those emotions kept him tethered to the dark side of the Force. In both canon and legends, Palpatine would test Vader's loyalty repeatedly, even grooming other potential apprentices to replace him if he faltered. The dynamic between Sith and apprentice was tense. Vader secretly dreamed of overthrowing Palpatine, while Palpatine saw Vader as both a valuable asset and an expendable tool if stronger candidates like Luke Skywalker emerged. Throughout the Imperial era, resistance slowly began to creep up against Palpatine's rule. Senators like Bail Organa and Mon Mothma organized a rebellion in secret, appalled by the Emperor's ever-growing list of atrocities, from enslaving populations to obliterating descendant worlds. Palpatine largely dismissed the early rebellion as a minor issue. His confidence was supreme, and not without reason. By 0 BBY, he had nearly completed the Death Star and dissolved the Imperial Senate entirely, declaring that the regional governors would maintain order. It seemed nothing could threaten his iron-fisted dominion. In 0 BBY, Palpatine's Death Star became operational, and immediately he demonstrated its power by destroying the planet Alderaan, a defenseless world, to send a message of fear, but this act only galvanized the Rebel Alliance. Soon after, Rebel starfighters achieved the impossible and blew up the Death Star during the Battle of Yavin. Thanks to heroes like Luke Skywalker, the loss of the super weapon was a rare stinging defeat for Palpatine. It was the first major crack in the Empire's aura of invincibility. For the next few years, the Galactic Civil War raged openly between the Empire and the Rebel Alliance. Emperor Palpatine, from his throne on Coruscant, directed vast resources to crush the rebels. He and Vader became aware that Luke Skywalker, the pilot who destroyed the Death Star, was strong in the Force and the son of Anakin Skywalker. Palpatine saw potential in Luke, either as an heir to replace Vader or simply a threat to eliminate. In 3 ABY, during the events of The Empire Strikes Back, Palpatine commanded Vader to turn or kill Luke, referring to the young Skywalker as the son of Anakin and a danger if not controlled. Vader, who secretly yearned to recruit Luke to help overthrow Emperor Palpatine, assured his master that Luke could be turned. A plot was set in motion to capture Luke and bring him to the Emperor. Everything culminated in 4 ABY at the Battle of Endor. As depicted in The Return of the Jedi, Palpatine masterminded a trap for the rebellion. He allowed the rebels to learn the location of the second Death Star under construction at Endor, hoping to lure the fleet into a decisive ambush. Confident in his foresight, Palpatine himself traveled to the new Death Star to personally oversee the battle and to finally meet Luke Skywalker face to face. In the Emperor's throne room, high above Endor, a dramatic confrontation unfolded. Palpatine showed confidence and malice as Luke Skywalker was brought before him by Darth Vader. The Emperor welcomed Luke, then proceeded to psychologically attack him. He revealed that the rebel fleet was walking into a trap and that Luke's friends on the forest moon of Endor would be soon captured or dead. Palpatine's goal was clear: push Luke to give in to his anger and despair, to strike him down in hatred, and thus complete the young Jedi's turn to the dark side. He taunted Luke about the rebels' imminent defeat, playing with him until Luke ignited his lightsaber and struck, only to be blocked by Vader's blade, exactly as Palpatine had planned. Father and son engaged in a fierce duel while the Emperor looked on, excitedly edging Luke on to embrace his aggression. When Luke eventually overpowered Vader but refused to kill him, Palpatine sneered at the young Jedi's compassion. Seeing Luke would not turn easily, the Emperor unleashed his own terrifying power. Cackling, he bombarded Luke with Force lightning, subjecting him to unbearable agonizing energy. As Luke was in pain, Palpatine showed no mercy. This was the fate of all who defied him, but in the pivotal moment, Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, awakened within. He could not watch his son die, and in an act of redemption and love, Vader seized the Emperor and, despite Palpatine's frantic lightning attacks, hurled him into the deep reactor shaft. With a howling scream, Emperor Palpatine plummeted to what seemed like to be his final death. Moments later, the Death Star was destroyed by the rebels, ensuring that nothing remained of the Emperor's body. Anakin's sacrifice fulfilled the ancient Jedi prophecy of the Chosen One by destroying Sidious, unfortunately losing his life in the process. Anakin brought balance to the Force, and for a moment, the galaxy had hope. The evil tyrant who had ruled for decades was gone, and the Empire was dealt a mortal blow at Endor. In both Canon and Legends continuity, Palpatine indeed dies at Endor in 4 ABY. However, this was not the end of his story. Through dark science and dark sorcery, Emperor Palpatine would return, albeit in a very different way in Legends expanded universe versus the modern canon. For the sake of time, I'm only going to cover the official canon timeline. In the official canon timeline, Palpatine's story after Endor unfolds differently than Legends. The Emperor did indeed die at the Battle of Endor. Vader's betrayal and the Death Star explosion saw that, but unbeknownst to the galaxy, Palpatine had prepared a contingency plan. His knowledge of Darth Plagueis' teachings drove him to pursue immortality at any cost. At the moment of death, Palpatine's consciousness transferred through the dark side into a clone body far away, likely with the help of loyal Sith cultists. This was not a clean process. The clone vessel that received Sidious' spirit was imperfect and unstable, a mere shell unable to sustain his immense power for long. The Emperor lived on, but severely crippled, his new body a decaying form connected to machines. Behind this miracle of unnatural survival was the secret sect known as Sith Eternal, a cult of dark side fanatics devoted to Darth Sidious. For years, even long before Palpatine's death, these cultists on the hidden Sith world of Exegol had been growing clones and conducting experiments to ensure their master's return. The Empire's own resources were funneled into a secret cloning project dedicated to Palpatine's immortality. One key project involved creating stand-cast artificial genetic constructs from Palpatine's DNA in hopes of producing a more suitable body. One such strandcast was a clone son named Dathan, created around 12 BBY. Dathan was a powerless clone, genetically Palpatine's son, but without Force sensitivity. He stayed with the Sith cult even though he was an abomination to them, but he was still a of some use to the Sith. In time, Dathan married a woman named Miramir after fleeing Exegol, and together they had a daughter in 15 ABY, which was Rey. To Palpatine, Rey was a great interest, a grandchild born of genetic legacy, and crucially, she was strong in the Force. Rey Palpatine represented the perfect vessel for his spirit. Her body could contain his power where his failed clones could not. When Palpatine learned of Rey's existence, he intended to possess her outright, but Dathan and Miramir heroically refused to hand over their child. They hid Rey on Jakku, selling her to a junk dealer for safekeeping, and then attempted to flee. The Sith cult's agent eventually caught up to Rey's parents and murdered them in 21 ABY, but crucially, he never found Rey herself. The child remained hidden, growing up scavenging on Jakku, unaware of her dark heritage. Palpatine's schemes were thus delayed, though he took comfort in the knowledge that in time, the Force might lead Rey back to him. Right after Endor, he had posthumously ordered Operation Cinder, the brutal scorched earth campaign that devastated several Imperial worlds as punishment for failing him, and to ensure that neither Empire nor Rebellion could truly claim victory. In secret, Palpatine also sent Imperials he deemed worthy on an exodus to the unknown regions to start the First Order, a new military power that would serve as a vehicle for his eventual return. All these plots unfolded from the shadows while the broken Empire and New Republic continued to struggle. Palpatine himself, however, remained hidden on Exegol, sustained by the Sith Eternal cult. Over 3 decades, the fanatics worked dark science and Sith alchemy to sustain the Emperor's flickering life and build him an unstoppable armada of revenge. They engineered Supreme Leader Snoke, a Strangcast puppet ruler with Force ability, to lead the First Order in the open, while Sidious pulled Snoke's strings from afar. And deep beneath Exegol's surface, they constructed the Final Order fleet. Hundreds of Star Destroyers, each outfitted with Death Star-like planet-killing cannons. The stage was set for the Sith's grand return, all in secrecy. By 35 ABY, Palpatine's body on Exegol was frail and grotesque. Blind eyes, withered flesh, suspended on a support arm, but his dark side power had grown, and with the First Order and the Final Order as his instruments, he was ready to announce himself. He broadcast a cryptic message across the galaxy saying the return of the Sith. This provoked Kylo Ren, Supreme Leader of the First Order at the time, to seek out Exegol, where Kylo Ren found the undead Emperor and learned the truth. Palpatine had been the power behind Snoke and the First Order all along. Palpatine revealed to Kylo Ren a massive armada of planet-destroying Star Destroyers, the Final Order, and offered Ren a dark bargain: kill Rey, the last Jedi, and in return, Palpatine would grant him dominion over the galaxy alongside the reborn Sith Empire. Ultimately, Rey herself discovered her lineage and Palpatine's location with the help from ancient Jedi text and the Wayfinder device. In the climactic battle of Exegol, the Resistance, aided by enormous citizens' fleet, launched a desperate attack to destroy the Sith Eternal forces. Rey arrived at the Sith Citadel to confront her grandfather. Palpatine, ancient yet alive with power, with hate, revealed his true plan. He wanted Rey to strike him down in anger, which would allow his spirit and the spirits of all the Sith to possess her, making her the new Empress Palpatine. He provoked Rey by threatening her friends and recounting the deaths of her parents, trying to ignite her fury. However, Rey resisted the pull to the dark side, refusing to give in to her hatred. At the same time, Kylo Ren, now redeemed as Ben Solo, arrived to help Rey, having had a change in heart. Sensing the bond between Rey and Ben, a Force dyad of unprecedented strength, Palpatine decided to exploit them instead. He drew on the dyad's life force to regenerate his own body. In a sudden rejuvenation, the Emperor restored himself to full power. His eyes blazed yellow, his voice deepened, and the pallid clone flesh knitted in a more vigorous form, now at last in a stable body empowered by the Force. Palpatine unleashed the might of Darth Sidious one final time. Lightning surged from Palpatine's fingertips into the sky, disabling the Resistance fleet, a display of power on a scale not seen before. He then turned his wrath on Rey. He flung Ben Solo aside into a ravine and told Rey that her spirit would soon join the Jedi who had once failed her before. But in the crucial moment, the voices of the past Jedi gave Rey strength, and she defiantly faced her grandfather. Palpatine channeled a torrent of dark side lightning at Rey, determined to obliterate her. Rey, armed with the lightsabers of both Anakin Skywalker and Leia Organa, formed an X-Guard to absorb the Emperor's onslaught, drawing upon all the Jedi who had ever lived. Rey pushed back. In a dramatic power struggle, Palpatine's own lightning was reflected back at him by the crossed sabers. The immense feedback began to deteriorate Palpatine's resurrected body. The Dark Lord of the Sith screamed in fury and fear as his body was consumed by his own energies, finally destroying him utterly. This time there was no escape for Darth Sidious, no clone contingency, no hidden spirit tether. The Sith Eternal cultists and the Final Order fleet were simultaneously wiped out by the Resistance, ensuring none remained to revive their master. With Palpatine's final defeat, the Sith lineage he embodied for so long was ended, and balance was restored once more by a new generation of Jedi. Sheev Palpatine's life story is one of unprecedented political cunning and dark side mastery. In public, he rose from seemingly a humble Naboo politician to Supreme Chancellor who deceived an entire galaxy and finally crowned himself Emperor. In secret, he was Darth Sidious, architect of the Clone Wars, destroyer of the Jedi Order, and the most powerful Sith Lord in history. Across both canon and legends, he left an indelible scar on the galaxy. He extinguished the light of the Jedi nearly completely, and trillions suffered under his tyranny. Yet in the end, both continuities affirm that Palpatine's overconfidence and lust for power led to ultimate failure. In canon, the courage of Rey and Ben Solo, backed by generations of Jedi, obliterated him and the Sith forever. Palpatine's relationships were defined by manipulation and betrayal. He betrayed his Sith master Plagueis, turned Anakin Skywalker against the Jedi, and discarded apprentices like Count Dooku when they no longer served his purpose. He engineered the downfall of close associates and enemies alike with a smile on his face. Perhaps his only true loyalty was to the dark side itself, and his own thirst for immortality. Despite all his power, Palpatine could not foresee the enduring strength of family and hope, the love of a father for his son, or a granddaughter's resolve to choose the light. Those were the forces that ultimately undid him. In the records of galactic history, Palpatine's reign is a grim lesson in how freedom can falter when fear and deceit take hold. But his defeat also reaffirms a core truth of Star Wars, that evil, no matter how insurmountable it seems, can be overcome by the courage and unity of those who refuse to yield to the darkness. Palpatine's complete story, spanning backgrounds in both canon and legends, stands as a sweeping saga of ambition, cunning, devastation, and ultimate justice. The self-proclaimed Emperor of the Galaxy, Darth Sidious, was finally destroyed by the very legacy he tried to eradicate, the resilient spirit of the Jedi and the unbreakable bonds of those who carry the light. That was the complete story of Sheev Palpatine, also known as Darth Sidious. If you like Star Wars lore, make sure you hit the like button if you like the video, but if you really like Star Wars lore, make sure you subscribe. Like, do it. Do it.